talking.
Talk loudly.
I'm talking like a normal person because that's the way he's going to talk. About this level, if you will.
Good. What does it say now? Record, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Do you press
I
it
thought
again?
you were going
Yeah.
good.
Then
I
what?
know. You-
Do I press it again?
Yeah, turn it off. How do I do that?
I see.
See, it's turning. See, it's turning?
Yes, it is turning.
Yeah, all right. So if it's
1911. This is,
Try it again.
I was born in Paris on the 15th of July, 1911.
Thank
Is that
you.
all right? Now, what else is there? Would you
There, I can.
talk a bit about your,
Childhood.
what is it? Your
Childhood.
childhood and
Youth.
youth.
Where did you spend these years?
Well, I was born in Paris. And then it went out. The light went out.
There you go.
I was born in Paris and taken over by my mother and father. But the war came and they were in holiday on the French coast and went straight over to England. And I had been lent to my cousins, the Comte and Comtesse de Kersin, and we were in Belgium. But as a result that the Germans advanced so rapidly that my parents took a boat, went in a boat and which took them to England, and I was put in a train with my cousins, and each carriage had about 30 soldiers who were retreating to Paris, to the Paris district. So we retreated, and when we arrived in Paris, I don't know what happened, I don't remember, but I know after that I found myself with my aunt and the cousins in Marseilles, where we were there. I was with them, where my brother and father, my brother and sister, had gone to England, and they were situated in a village outside London with their nurses. My parents were in London itself. My father had to go to Greece. Oh, it's dark, it's gone dark. It's gone dark now.
Oh, it is. There you go.
And it was only some years later when the situation was advancing for the Allies that I was sent off by train and put in a boat at Calais to England, where I was taken to where my brother and sister were, who I didn't know, but I was already, it was 1914, I was 3 or 4 years old, you see, and they were older than me. So so I grew up with them in England for a certain time. That was the war period.
Mm-hmm.
And as I grew up in England, my father had done his education in England in Eton and Oxford University, and they wanted to send my brother and I to Eton, but that didn't work because they had too many people then, and they couldn't take more people. So I was sent to a new school called Canford School, which was starting in Dorchester in the south of England. I did my education there, and then I was going to Oxford, and I took the examination, but as I was born in France, I had to do military service. And so I said, well, I'd better do military service after, but before, and then go to the university after. But that didn't do. I had to go do my military service, and I did it in the battalion of Chasseurs Alpins, which were on the Côte d'Azur, where there were about 6 battalions of these chasseurs, because the probable war between France and Italy, which was supposed to be open at that moment. And so I did my military service in the 9e Chasseurs Alpins, and then instead of going to Oxford University, I arranged that I could go and work in the Upper Westminster Bank.
Hold on.
Okay.
I could work in the Barclays Bank in Paris. And so I went into the Barclays Bank, and I was only there as a learner, so I wasn't given any money of any sort. But I was for 3 years in the bank, learning the different means of working of a bank, the different receiving people, taking their money, putting it aside, doing this and doing that. And then the war came, and then I was immediately put in a battalion of chasseurs and sent to the front. And the Germans, unfortunately, advanced so quickly that our battalion was practically completely taken prisoner by the Germans. And after a short stay as prisoners in France, we were put in a train and sent off to the other side of Germany, the eastern, as I was only a NCO, I wasn't an officer. I was put with the soldiers, ordinary soldiers, corporals, sergeants, and everything, they were all together. And we were for a certain time in France before we sent by train to the other side of Germany, in, what was it called now? It was a part of Germany that had once belonged to Poland and then to Austria, and then the Germans had taken it from Austria. Göritz it's called. And we were put in the camp at Göritz, and eventually sent off in working parties around Göritz in that district where I was. It was very hard work, with very bad food, and it lasted until a long time later, when the Russians began advancing through Poland towards that part of Germany, and we were made with English prisoners in the camp at Göritz, and the French prisoners and the Belgian prisoners to march off to the west, which we had to do. And we got practically nothing to eat, and we had to work. We marched the French prisoners as far as Hanover. That's right across Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And then days and days of marching. I tell you, it was very hard work, with very little to eat. At Hanover, they made us work, rather stupid work, until finally the Allies advanced on Hanover, and we were saved by American prisoner soldiers who were attached to the British regiments, and we were freed like that. But I must say that we were in a pretty bad way, because we'd had very little to eat. But of course, during the week or so where Hanover was emptied of all the German soldiers or members of the of their government, they'd all disappeared, and we just had to try and find food as we could in various houses which were empty because the people had left too. And when the Americans came in, we were saved, and that I was eventually sent to Paris, and from Paris back to Cannes, where I found my family. The family in a dreadful state, because my sister had been arrested and tortured and killed by the Germans. My parents had been arrested, but they didn't kill them, but they were in a dreadful state.
Right.
And so I had a bad return, as you might say.
Sounds like it. Hold on 1 second.
Of course, I can't tell you how hard it was.
Oh yeah.
Especially these the training across Germany by train, and then afterwards coming back on foot.
Mm-hmm.
But from Görlitz to Hanover, it's right across Germany. All that on foot we did.
Wow.
The British British prisoners with us, we were all together, and it worked very well. And when they got us somewhere, they put us in an empty factory for the night. The next day we went on walking, marching, and I tell you, it was a long march right across Germany like that, with very little food.
Awful.
Except we were rather lucky because we'd been receiving Red Cross food at the camp, and so we had a certain amount of food with us. Not much, but a certain amount of food.
Wow.
But and then at Hanover we had no food. We were put to work there. Then all the Germans troops left. At the same time, the government, Nazi government people all left, and the town of Hanover was completely empty, except by the people who lived there, who half of them had no interest in the Nazi or the army or anything else, except themselves and the work they did. So we managed to get a little food through the people in the town until the Americans came in, which was a great surprise for us because we didn't know they'd come so quickly.
How about? Here, I have a question for you here.
Oh, what's that?
Can you read number 6?
What have I got to say now?
Do you see this one here?
Oh yes, I see something. I can't see, it's black.
What?
It's black and I can't read it.
Here. Is that better? What were Helen's activities during the war? You see it?
What?
Yeah.
Something.
What were Helen's
Who?
Helen's
Elaine's
activities
activities
during the war?
during the war. Well, Elaine was she had before, and just when the war started, she was in the group of people who were organized to send foreigners or anybody on the Côte d'Azur through out of France. And these people, she used to collect them, and even when the Germans were in occupation, and they'd be sent by train through to Spain, from Spain to Portugal, and Portugal they were put in ships and they went to either to Britain or to America. And she did this for a long time, until the Germans found out and arrested her. And then they wanted to know how she did it and who she did it for and all that. She refused to tell them anything, so that they tortured her terribly and finally ended up by shooting her. They took about 20 people at Nice who had been working against the Germans, and took them up on top of one of the hills behind the town and shot them dead. Terrible. And when I came back as freed, I learned that news. I didn't, because they couldn't tell me, they couldn't write to me in Germany and tell me what had happened, as I was a prisoner. But I only learnt it when I got home, that Elaine had been murdered like that, which was terrible because I was always very much with Elaine in everything she did. She was older than I was, my brother even older, but he was unable to do any work because he had a bad condition. He couldn't walk well, he had a thing on his legs and his arms, and he couldn't do any work of that sort. But Elaine, of course, did it. She did it, she could do it. The Red Cross work, and afterwards the work for the people who were trying to save the foreigners that happened to be on the coast, and get them out of France and get them abroad. For instance, I was after the war with Stephen and in Paris, the hotel, and at the entrance, but near the hotel, there were certain shops, and there was a shop my brother went with me. We went in to see. He wanted to get some material for something or other, and then they arranged it, and he gave his address and name, and the man said, "What, Vagliano? You, that's your name?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "You know, I was saved in the war by a young woman called Vagliano in the south of France. He was there with his shop there he had. He had to give it up. I think he was a Jew, you see. He had to get and Scotty was sent through Spain to Portugal, and Portugal he went to America, and then he came back to Paris after the war. And it just happened to fall on my brother, and my brother mentioned the name, it happened that he had been saved by her, like lots of other people had been. Oh, she did a lot of terrible work to getting people through Spain and Portugal. And then they either went by plane to Great Britain or by boat to America.
Wow.
Go through them. And I, of course, only learnt that after the war when I got home.
Mm-hmm.
And she had been taken, tortured and shot by the Germans, which was a great, terrible thing for me because I was very close to my sister. We were very, very,
Mm-hmm.
very good friends together. Well, that's what happens in wartime, you see.
Right. Who did she work with?
What do you mean, who did she work with? Does she work?
With was it a group or what sort of?
Oh, no, oh, you mean it was a military thing, a military arrangement by which foreigners could be sent out of France through Spain, and they got to Portugal and they were put in boats or in aeroplanes to Great Britain. And that was organised through chiefly in England, the people who were behind it, because no, she did some wonderful work.
Oh yeah. Okay. Here's another one.
And of course, I came back to that, which was
Horrible.
I know, a very sad thing for me.
How was she caught? Who turned her in?
What? How was she caught?
Yes, who turned her in?
There was some woman who was taken prisoner and gave her. He told the Germans what she was doing, this woman, and gave the names of my sister to the Germans. There was a woman who was arrested who gave her away. That's how they found out that they were sending people abroad.
Right.
The Germans didn't know that they were being able to send people through Spain and Portugal to America and to England. All that was quite secret. But of course,
Do you know the woman's name?
no, she was called Meggen Vagliano. So I don't know what her name.
No.
She had a name, but I can't remember. She had a special name to work on.
Right.
But I can't remember what it was.
But the woman who turned Helen in, what was her name? Do you not know?
Hmm?
The woman who turned Ellen in, do you know her name?
The name of the woman, I did know her, but I can't remember her name. I know she was a woman who was supposed to be very much working for the Allies, and then she was frightened because she was taken. The Germans took her in and examined her, and she gave way to them. That's the only thing I know about her. What happened to her, I don't know. Afterwards.
Right.
But you see, there was a terrific number of people working on the coast then, and against the Germans, of course, and they took these people. When my sister was taken and they shot them, they had already these people in the prison in Nice, and then it was just before they had to fly out of France into Italy, the Germans. They took these people out of the prison and shot them, whatever they happened to have done. And my sister was particular, and she was saved. Her body was brought back by the Russian priest at Cannes, who was very much with the family, and he went back and he found her body and brought her back, and she was placed in the Russian church at Cannes. And every year they have a service for her when the time comes. They've just had it now. The service for her. She's still, her body is still in the church. I mean, under the church they have chapels, and there's a special chapel with her, which her body is in. Yeah. And there's a very nice priest that he's gone now. He's died. I think he was quite old, and he went to the place in Nice where they shot these people, and he found her, and he brought her back to the church, to my parents too, because they didn't know what had happened. Parents, they knew that she'd been arrested. But, oh, it was a dreadful business.
Yeah.
And I came back free to learn all that.
Right.
It happened. It was an awful blow for me, because we were very much together. My sister and I, we'd always worked very well together.
That's, yeah. How accurate is Une Résistante de Cannes, the book that your mother wrote? Is that a
How many?
How accurate?
How accurate?
Yes, is that book that she wrote?
Oh, she did wonderful work. She
Yes.
sent lots of people out, a lot of foreigners. For instance, a certain number of British people who were working in the south of France. And a certain number of Jews, particularly also, who had shops and things in France. And when the Germans came in, they had to try and do their best to escape. And she got these people through this arrangement through Spain and to Portugal. And in Portugal, there were English centre who looked after that and put them on either on boats or on aeroplanes to England. And there were a whole lot of people were saved like that in the south of France, because the south of France, before the war, it was very much occupied by the British, who came on holidays, and also the others who had shops, English shops. They sold things like that, and other things, positions like the head of the golf course or the tennis courts or things like that were mostly British.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to get them out somehow, especially when the German occupied that part of the coast, because first it was the Italians, and the Italians were particularly helpless at that sort of thing, and the Germans took over in their place. When the Italians made peace with America and Britain, the Germans came into Italy, and they took over all the business of the foreigners who had been working in France.
Mm.
I didn't know any of that in Germany, you see. I couldn't, they couldn't write to me and tell me what they were doing, you see. So I only learnt it when I got home.
Mm-hmm.
It happened, it was an awful business.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Here we go. And one more. Who else could I talk to about Hélène?
Who did what?
Who else do you think I could talk to about Hélène? Who would know something about Hélène?
Who would know about her now?
Yes.
Oh, people in Cannes.
Mm-hmm.
A certain people, even in the government of the town, who could tell you about Helen, who are now members of the committee in the town.
Mhm.
Every year they have a service for her. Every year at a certain date. It's in August, I think it is. And of course at the church they were now. There were a tremendous number of Russians in the South of France.